On a macro scale, it's systematic. The not showing up for black women is systematic, right? If we think about slavery, how they've intentionally separated families like men and women. If we think about ACS, how they intentionally separated children from their families. It's all systematic. So it's not a surprise when black men don't show up for black women. It's not a surprise when black men degrade black women. It's not a surprise. People don't understand that trauma is genetically passed down. Like, you think oh, this one thing happened in generations, but it's been proven that it's passed down. And I think that we don't acknowledge that enough, and we're quick to point fingers and be like, oh, well, it's because of rap music, or it's because of the Kardashians, or it's because of these things. And it's really not. It's just the unfolding of things that were already happening. And now that we have social media, it's more apparent. They don't understand why they have resentment towards black men, or they don't understand why they have resentment towards black women. That whole sense of community is really, really trauma informed. It's not a surprise that when black women have violence committed against them, especially around police, to some extent, some black men was like, well, they deserved it, or they had their dress was too tight, or, you know, they look like whatever, and they have these assumptions about what a black woman's body or should be or should not be doing, or even if they're like just blatantly trying to protect themselves. Men, to some extent, I think, and from my personal experience, think they have some type of ownership over a woman, of like, this is this thing that's gonna love me, take care of me, and that's it. Or there's this thing that has to look good because I say she had to look good. And in reality, I mean, at least for me, it's like, we're in a partnership. And so that, like, if I ride for you, you ride for me. That's how that goes. And men don't really see it that way. But it's also because of, like I said, a long history of, like, just abuse and systematic things that were done to our community to intentionally create these circumstances. Slave masters intentionally did these things to us, to break down black women, to break down black men, to break down black pride in general. Once again, we go back to, like, having to educate ourselves about what that process looked like. This is kind of like the end result of it. We have to acknowledge that to some extent and figure out, like, what does that look like? How do we heal now? Because the trauma is done. So now it's like we don't have nowhere else to go but to rebuild, or we continue to live this lifestyle of trauma.